Emma is 12 years old and scared of flying. On a small airplane, the pilot suddenly gets sick and cannot fly anymore. The plane starts falling toward mountains. Emma has secretly studied flying for 2 years. Now she must use her knowledge to save everyone on the plane, or they will all crash. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. Emma Rodriguez was 12 years old and she hated flying. Her hands were sweaty as she walked across the small airport in Montana. It was a cold morning in October, and she pulled her jacket tight around her body. Her brown backpack felt heavy on her shoulders. "You'll be fine, sweetie," her aunt said, giving her a hug at the gate. "It's only 2 hours to Wyoming. Your uncle will meet you there." Emma nodded but didn't smile. She didn't want to go on this trip. She didn't want to fly on a tiny plane. She wanted to stay home with her video games and her cat. But her parents were getting divorced, and everyone thought it would be good for her to spend time with relatives. Nobody asked what Emma wanted. The airplane was smaller than she expected. It was a white Cessna with room for only 6 passengers. Emma counted the seats as she climbed the small stairs. Rows 1 through 3 on each side. She had seat 3B, which was the back right seat. Row 3 was basically the last row. She could see the whole cabin from there. A man in a pilot uniform stood at the front. He looked about 50 years old with short gray hair. His name tag said, Captain Jim Stevens. He smiled at each passenger as they boarded. "Welcome aboard," he said to Emma. "First time on a small plane?" "Yes," Emma said quietly. "Don't worry. I've been flying for 25 years. We'll get you to Wyoming safe and sound." Emma sat down in row 3 and buckled her seatbelt. She pulled out her phone, but there was no signal this far from town. She sighed and put it away. This was going to be the longest 2 hours of her life. The other passengers got on the plane. In row 1 sat Mr. Chen, a businessman in a gray suit. He was already typing on his laptop before the plane even started moving. In row 2 sat Mrs. Patricia Walsh, an older woman with white hair and a kind face. She wore a green sweater and carried a knitting bag. Next to her sat a young man named Jake Martinez. He looked like he was in college, wearing jeans and a university sweatshirt. He had headphones around his neck. That was everyone. Just 5 people on this small plane flying over the Rocky Mountains. Captain Stevens closed the door and went to the cockpit. Emma could see him through the open cockpit door, checking switches and buttons on the control panel. The instrument panel looked complicated, with dozens of gauges and dials. The engine started with a loud noise that made Emma jump. Mrs. Walsh turned around and smiled at her. "First flight, dear?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am." "Oh, it's wonderful. I fly this route all the time to visit my grandchildren. You'll love seeing the mountains from up here." Emma tried to smile back, but her stomach felt sick. She didn't think she would love anything about this flight. Captain Stevens spoke over the intercom. His voice sounded calm and friendly. "Good morning, everyone. This is Captain Stevens. We're going to taxi out to the runway now. Our flight time today will be about 1 hour and 50 minutes. The weather looks clear, so we should have a smooth ride. Please keep your seatbelts fastened." The plane started moving slowly across the concrete. Emma looked out her window at the small airport. There were only a few other planes parked nearby. Mountains rose up in the distance, covered with snow at the peaks. The sky was bright blue without any clouds. They stopped at the end of the runway. Emma heard Captain Stevens talking to someone on the radio. She couldn't understand all the words, but it sounded professional and routine. Then the engine got louder. Much louder. The plane started rolling down the runway, picking up speed. Emma grabbed the armrests and closed her eyes. Her heart was beating fast. She felt the moment when the wheels left the ground. Her stomach dropped as they lifted into the air. The plane tilted up and up. She was too scared to look out the window. "Isn't it beautiful?" Mrs. Walsh said from the row in front of her. Emma opened her eyes and looked out the window. They were already high above the ground. The airport looked like a toy below them. Cars on the highway looked like ants. The mountains stretched out in every direction, covered with green forests and white snow. It was beautiful. Emma had to admit that. She had never seen anything like this before. The plane leveled off and the engine noise became steady. Captain Stevens came back on the intercom. "We've reached our cruising altitude of 9,000 feet. You can relax now. If you need anything, just let me know." Emma did relax a little. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad. She pulled out a book from her backpack and tried to read. But it was hard to concentrate. She kept looking out the window at the incredible view. For the first hour, everything was fine. Mr. Chen worked on his laptop. Mrs. Walsh did her knitting. Jake listened to music on his headphones. Emma read her book and looked out the window. But then Emma noticed something strange. The engine sound changed. It was subtle at first, just a small difference in the pitch. But Emma had good ears. She was in the school band and played clarinet. She could hear when notes were even slightly off. The engine sound was definitely off. She looked toward the cockpit. Captain Stevens was checking his instruments more carefully now. He adjusted some switches. His body language looked different, more tense, more focused. Emma felt worried. She put down her book and listened carefully to the engine. The sound changed again. This time it was more obvious. The engine made a coughing noise, then went back to normal, then coughed again. Mr. Chen looked up from his laptop. "What's that noise?" he asked. Before anyone could answer, there was a loud bang from the front of the plane. The whole aircraft shook violently. The engine sound became rough and uneven, like a lawn mower running over rocks. Mrs. Walsh gasped. Jake pulled off his headphones. Everyone looked toward the cockpit with fear on their faces. Captain Stevens spoke on the intercom, and now his voice was serious. "Folks, we're having some engine trouble. I'm going to need to make an emergency landing. Please make sure your seatbelts are tight and stay calm." But Emma could hear something else in his voice. She could hear worry. This wasn't a small problem. The engine got worse. It made terrible grinding noises and kept cutting out for a few seconds at a time. Every time it quit, the plane would drop a little and everyone's stomach would lurch. Emma looked out the window. Below them was nothing but mountains and forest. No roads. No towns. No flat places to land. "Where are we going to land?" Mr. Chen asked loudly. Captain Stevens was talking urgently on his radio. Emma could hear parts of the conversation. "Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. This is Cessna November 547 Yankee declaring an emergency. Complete engine failure. Looking for somewhere to put down. Engine failure. Complete engine failure." Those words made Emma's blood run cold. The radio crackled with a response. "Cessna 7 Yankee, nearest airport is Mountain Ridge Airport, 40 miles northeast of your position." "Negative," Captain Stevens said. "I can't make 40 miles. I'm looking at the terrain but I don't see any good options. It's all trees and mountains." Mrs. Walsh started crying softly. Jake's face had gone pale. Mr. Chen was gripping his armrests so hard his knuckles were white. The engine made one final terrible grinding noise and then stopped completely. The sudden silence was terrifying. Without the engine, the only sound was the wind whistling past the plane. They were gliding now, falling slowly toward the mountains with no power. Emma watched Captain Stevens through the cockpit door. He was working frantically, trying different switches, talking on the radio, looking for a place to land. She could see sweat on his neck. Then it happened. Captain Stevens suddenly grabbed his left arm. His face twisted in pain. He made a small sound and slumped forward against the controls. The plane immediately started turning to the left as his body pushed against the control wheel. Without someone flying it, they would spiral into the mountains within a minute or two. Emma stared in shock. The pilot was unconscious. They had no engine and no pilot. They were going to crash. For 3 seconds, Emma sat frozen in her seat. Her mind was blank with terror. But then something clicked in her brain. A memory from 2 years ago. 2 years ago, when Emma was 10, something terrible happened. Her older brother Marcus died in a car accident. He was 16 and had just gotten his driver's license. A drunk driver hit his car on a rainy night. Marcus died instantly. After Marcus died, Emma stopped talking for 3 months. She went to school and came home, but she didn't speak. Her parents took her to doctors and therapists, but nothing helped. She was lost in her grief. Then one day, her father brought home Marcus's things from his bedroom. Most of it was normal teenager stuff, clothes, books, posters. But there was also a box of flight training manuals and books about aviation. Emma didn't know Marcus had been interested in flying. But when she opened the books, she found notes in his handwriting. He had been studying to become a pilot. He had checked out books from the library about aerodynamics, navigation, and emergency procedures. He had printed out guides about how to fly different types of aircraft. Emma started reading the books. At first it was just because they had Marcus's handwriting in them. But then she got interested in the actual content. Flying was like a puzzle, and Emma loved puzzles. She read everything in Marcus's collection. Then she found more resources online. She watched hours and hours of YouTube videos about flying. She joined online forums where real pilots talked about their work. She downloaded a free flight simulator game on her tablet and practiced every night. Her parents thought she was just playing games. They didn't know she was seriously studying aviation. She never told them because she knew they would worry. They would think she was obsessed with flying because of Marcus, that it was unhealthy. But Emma wasn't obsessed. She was just learning. And she was good at it. She spent 2 years studying. She learned how to read instruments, how to talk on the radio, how to handle emergencies. She practiced hundreds of landings on her flight simulator. She memorized the procedures for engine failures, electrical failures, and forced landings. She never thought she would actually use this knowledge. It was just something she did to feel close to her brother, to understand what he had loved. But now, in this moment, with Captain Stevens unconscious and the plane falling toward the mountains, Emma realized something important. She might be the only person on this plane who had any idea how to fly. Emma unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up. "What are you doing?" Mrs. Walsh cried. "Sit down." Emma didn't answer. She walked quickly to the front of the cabin. When she got close enough to see into the cockpit, she confirmed what she feared. Captain Stevens was slumped over, unconscious. He was breathing, but his eyes were closed. The plane was in a steep left turn, losing altitude fast. "Someone help him!" Mr. Chin shouted. "He's having a heart attack." "I'll try," Jake said, unbuckling his seatbelt. But he looked terrified and confused. Emma squeezed past Jake and into the tiny cockpit. She had to push Captain Stevens back in his seat to access the controls. His body was heavy and hard to move. "What are you doing?" Jake asked. "You're just a kid." Emma didn't have time to explain. She grabbed the control wheel and turned it to the right. The plane immediately stopped the steep turn and began flying straight again. Then she pulled back gently on the wheel. The nose came up and they stopped the rapid descent. The plane was flying straight and level now, but they were still gliding down toward the mountains with no engine. "Oh my God," Mrs. Walsh said. "The little girl is flying the plane." Emma's hands were shaking, but she kept them steady on the controls. The plane felt heavy and real, not like her simulator at all. She could feel the wind pushing against it. She had to make constant tiny adjustments to keep it flying smoothly. She needed help. She needed to talk to someone on the ground who could guide her. Emma picked up the microphone clipped to the control panel. She pressed the button and spoke as clearly as she could. "Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. This is Cessna November 547 Yankee. The pilot is unconscious. I am a passenger and I need help landing this plane." There was a pause. Then a voice came back, full of confusion. "Cessna 7 Yankee, please repeat. Did you say the pilot is unconscious?" "Yes," Emma said. Her voice was steadier than she expected. "Captain Stevens had a medical emergency. He's unconscious. I'm flying the plane now, but I need someone to help me land it." Another pause. "Cessna 7 Yankee, who is speaking? What is your name and what is your flight experience?" Emma took a breath. "My name is Emma Rodriguez. I'm 12 years old. I don't have a pilot's license, but I've been studying aviation for 2 years. I've practiced on flight simulators. I know the basics, but I've never flown a real plane before." Behind her, she heard Mr. Chen say, "A 12-year-old? We're going to die." But Mrs. Walsh said something different. "Quiet. Let her concentrate." A new voice came on the radio, calmer and more authoritative. "Emma, this is Linda Parker. I'm a flight instructor and I'm here at Mountain Ridge Airport. I'm going to help you through this. First, I need you to tell me what you see on your instruments." Emma scanned the panel, just like she had practiced hundreds of times on her simulator. The altimeter shows 7,800 feet. The airspeed indicator shows 92 knots. The attitude indicator shows we're level. The heading indicator shows 270 degrees. Perfect, Emma. You're doing great. Now, the most important thing is to maintain the right airspeed for gliding. I want you to adjust your speed to 70 knots. Push the nose down gently until the airspeed needle points to 70. Emma pushed forward on the control wheel until the airspeed showed 70 knots. The plane felt more stable immediately. "Good," Linda said. "That's your best glide speed. Now, how fast are you losing altitude?" Emma watched the altimeter for 60 seconds. "About 450 feet per minute. That's normal." "Emma, I need to ask you something important. How much do you really know about flying? I need to understand what you can do." Emma thought carefully. She didn't want to lie, but she also didn't want to sound like she knew nothing. "I've studied aviation books and videos for 2 years. I know how airplanes work and how to read the instruments. I've practiced landings hundreds of times on a realistic flight simulator. I know I'm just a kid, but I understand the basic principles. I can follow instructions." There was a pause. Then Linda said, "Emma, I believe you. And I'm going to get you down safely. But I need you to trust me and do exactly what I say. Can you do that?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Now, I'm looking at a map of your area. There's a small airport called Cedar Field Airport about 12 miles ahead of you. I think you can make it there. I'm going to guide you to that airport and we're going to land this plane together. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am." Behind her, Emma heard Mrs. Walsh say quietly, "You can do this, honey. We believe in you." For the next 10 minutes, Linda talked Emma through every detail of flying toward Cedar Field Airport. She explained how to make gentle turns, how to judge distance, how to manage altitude. Emma listened to every word and followed every instruction. Her fear was still there, but it was pushed to the back of her mind. Right now, she had a job to do. Mr. Chen had moved up to help with Captain Stevens. He checked the pilot's pulse and breathing. "He's alive but unconscious," Mr. Chen said. "I think it's a heart attack." Jake had his phone out and was recording everything. "This is insane," he kept saying. "This is absolutely insane." But Mrs. Walsh stayed calm. She had moved to the seat right behind Emma. "You're doing wonderfully, dear," she said. "Just keep listening to that nice lady on the radio." Emma saw the airport in the distance. It was tiny, just a single runway in a clearing surrounded by forest. There were a few small buildings and some parked planes. As they got closer, she could see emergency vehicles lining up near the runway. "I can see the airport," Emma said into the microphone. "Excellent, Emma. Now, I want you to fly over the airport so we can see the runway and check the wind. Don't try to land yet. Just fly straight over it." Emma flew over Cedar Field Airport at 7,000 feet. She could see people on the ground looking up at them. The fire trucks and ambulances were ready. "The wind is coming from the south at about 8 knots, Linda said. "You'll be landing on runway 18, which means you'll be landing into the wind. That's good, it will help slow you down." Emma's heart was pounding. This was really happening. She was going to try to land an airplane. "Now, Emma, I'm going to walk you through the landing procedure step by step. The most important thing is to maintain your airspeed all the way to touchdown. If you go too slow, the plane will stall and drop. If you go too fast, you'll float down the runway and might run out of room. Understand?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Now, fly past the airport and then make a wide left turn to line up with the runway. Take your time. There's no rush." Emma flew past the airport and began a gentle left turn. Her hands were sweating on the control wheel but she kept them steady. She could see the runway through the windscreen now, a long strip of gray asphalt with white markings. 3 miles out, Linda said. "How does it look?" "I can see the runway. I'm lined up with it." "Perfect. Now, there's a lever on your left labeled flaps. Do you see it?" Emma looked and found it. "Yes, I see it. When I tell you, I want you to move that lever to the first position. This will extend the flaps, which will slow you down and help you descend. But not yet. Wait for my instruction." Emma's hands were shaking now. She could see individual people on the ground. She could see the numbers on the runway, 18 painted in huge white letters. 2 miles out, Linda said. "Now, Emma, lower your flaps to the first position." Emma moved the lever. She felt the plane slow down and the nose pitch up slightly. She had to push forward to keep descending toward the runway. "How does it feel?" Linda asked. "Different from the simulator but I think I'm okay." "You're doing great. 1 mile out now. Lower the flaps to the second position." Emma moved the lever again. The plane slowed even more. The runway was getting closer and closer. Behind her, everyone was silent. Nobody spoke. They just watched this 12-year-old girl trying to land an airplane. "Half a mile," Linda said. Her voice was very calm. "You're looking good, Emma. Keep your speed at 70 knots and aim for the numbers at the beginning of the runway." The ground was rushing up now. Emma could see the runway markings clearly. Her heart felt like it was going to explode, but she kept her hands steady. "Quarter mile. You're almost there, Emma. When you get close to the ground, you're going to pull back gently on the controls. This is called the flare. It will level the plane off just above the runway. But not yet. Wait until you're about 10 feet off the ground." Emma's whole world had narrowed to the runway in front of her and Linda's voice in her ear. Nothing else existed. "Get ready to flare. Slowly pull back. Gently. Gently." Emma pulled back on the control wheel, raising the nose of the plane. The descent slowed. For a moment they were flying just a few feet above the runway. Hold it off. Let it settle on its own. The main wheels touched the runway with a firm bump. Emma held the nose up until it settled down naturally. They were on the ground, rolling down the runway. Brakes! Linda shouted. Push on the top of the rudder pedals. Emma pushed her feet down on the brake pedals. The plane slowed quickly. Within seconds they had rolled to a stop on the runway, about halfway down. For a moment, there was total silence. Then Linda's voice came over the radio, and Emma could hear emotion in it. Cessna 7 Yankee, you are down and safe. Emma, that was the most incredible thing I have ever seen. You just saved 5 lives, including your own. The cabin erupted. Mrs. Walsh was crying and laughing. Mr. Chen was clapping. Jake was shouting, "Oh my God! Oh my God!" Emma sat in the pilot's seat, her hands still on the controls, and started shaking. Now that it was over, all the fear came flooding back. She had just landed an airplane. A real airplane. And everyone was alive. Within seconds, emergency vehicles surrounded the plane. Paramedics rushed on board to help Captain Stevens. Mr. Chen helped them move him carefully. The paramedic said he had a heart attack but would probably survive. Emma climbed out of the pilot's seat on shaky legs. Mrs. Walsh hugged her tightly. You saved us, the old woman said through her tears. You brave, brave girl. Outside, Emma was immediately surrounded by firefighters, paramedics, and airport workers. Everyone wanted to shake her hand. A woman in a pilot's uniform pushed through the crowd. Emma, the woman said. I'm Linda Parker. I was the one on the radio. Emma looked at her. Linda was maybe 40 years old with short brown hair and kind eyes. She knelt down so she was at Emma's level. Emma, I've been a pilot and flight instructor for 18 years. What you just did was extraordinary. You should be incredibly proud. I was so scared, Emma said quietly. Being scared is normal. But you stayed calm and followed instructions. That's what good pilots do. Linda paused. Emma, can I ask you something? Why did you know so much about flying? Emma told her about Marcus. About the books he left behind. About the 2 years of studying. Linda listened carefully, and when Emma finished, there were tears in Linda's eyes. Your brother would be so proud of you, Linda said. And I bet he was watching over you today. The media arrived within an hour. News reporters with cameras and microphones crowded around Emma. They all wanted to interview the 12-year-old girl who landed a plane. How did you stay so calm? One reporter asked. I just did what I learned, Emma said. And I listened to Linda. She's the real hero. She talked me through everything. Do you want to be a pilot when you grow up? Emma thought about that question. Before today, she had never really considered it. The flying had just been a way to feel close to Marcus. But now, having actually flown a real airplane, having felt the controls in her hands and the sky around her, something had changed inside her. Yes, Emma said. I think I do want to be a pilot. Emma's parents arrived at Cedar Field Airport 3 hours later. They had driven from Montana as fast as they could. Her mother was crying, her father looked pale and shocked. I had no idea you knew anything about flying, her mother said, hugging Emma so tight she could barely breathe. I learned from Marcus's books, Emma explained. I've been studying for 2 years. Her father looked at her with an expression she had never seen before. It was respect. He was looking at her not as a child, but as someone who had done something remarkable. Marcus would be proud, her father said softly. I'm proud. The story went viral on the internet. Videos of the landing were shared millions of times. News networks ran stories about the miracle girl who saved 5 lives. Emma's photo was on the front page of newspapers across the country. But the attention that meant the most came from the aviation community. Pilots from around the world sent Emma messages of support and admiration. The FAA sent her a letter of commendation. The Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association gave her an award for airmanship. Linda Parker became Emma's friend and mentor. She offered to give Emma free flight lessons when she was old enough to start official training. "You have natural ability," Linda told her. "With proper training, you could be an excellent pilot." Captain Jim Stevens recovered from his heart attack. When he was well enough, he met with Emma at the hospital. "You saved my life," he said, shaking her hand. "And you saved everyone else on that plane. I've been flying for 25 years, and I've never seen anything like what you did. Thank you." 6 months later, Emma enrolled in a Civil Air Patrol cadet program. She studied aviation ground school and went on flights with licensed pilots. She learned radio communication, navigation, and emergency procedures, all the real training to go with the knowledge she had taught herself. Her relationship with her parents improved too. They stopped treating her like a child who couldn't handle difficult things. They respected her intelligence and her abilities. They supported her dream of becoming a pilot. Most importantly, Emma stopped feeling so sad about Marcus. She realized that by learning to fly, she had kept his dream alive. Every time she went up in an airplane, he was with her. On the first anniversary of the emergency landing, Emma went back to Cedar Field Airport. Linda took her up for a flight lesson in a small Cessna, similar to the one she had landed that day. They flew over the same mountains, the same forests. But this time, Emma was in the pilot's seat by choice, not by emergency. She was learning to fly the right way, with proper instruction and supervision. As they circled above Cedar Field Airport, Linda said, "Want to try a landing?" Emma smiled. "Yes, ma'am." She lined up the plane with the runway, managed her altitude and airspeed, extended the flaps at the right times, and brought the Cessna down for a smooth landing. "Perfect," Linda said. "You're a natural." Emma taxied off the runway and parked the plane. As she shut down the engine, she thought about how much had changed in 1 year. She had started as a scared kid on a plane ride she didn't want to take. She had ended up discovering her purpose in life. Sometimes, Emma thought, the worst days can become the best days. Sometimes, the things that scare us most can show us who we really are. She unbuckled her seatbelt and climbed out of the Cessna. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky orange and purple. It was beautiful. Emma looked up at the sky and whispered, "Thank you, Marcus. For the books. For the knowledge. For everything." Then she walked toward the airport terminal, where her parents were waiting to hear about her lesson. She wasn't just a kid anymore. She was a pilot in training. And someday, she would have her license. Someday, she would fly professionally. Someday, she would help others the way Linda had helped her. But for now, she was just Emma Rodriguez, a 12-year-old girl who had done something impossible and lived to tell about it. The girl from row 8 who grabbed the microphone and saved 5 lives. 5 years after the emergency landing, Emma Rodriguez stood at the graduation ceremony at the Aviation Academy. She was 17 years old now, and she had just completed her advanced flight training. The director of the academy called her name. Emma Rodriguez, graduating with honors. Emma will be continuing her training to become a commercial airline pilot. The audience applauded. In the front row, Emma's parents clapped and cheered. Next to them sat Linda Parker, Emma's mentor and friend. And next to Linda sat Captain Jim Stevens, who had made a full recovery and returned to flying. Also in the audience were the passengers from that fateful flight 5 years ago. Mrs. Patricia Walsh, now 80 years old, had flown in from Wyoming. Mr. Chen had driven from Montana. Jake Martinez, now graduated from college and working as a journalist, was there with his camera. They had all stayed in touch with Emma over the years. They called themselves the Row 8 Club, because Emma's seat that day had been in Row 3, but they joked she was really piloting from Row 8 in their hearts. After the ceremony, they all gathered for dinner at a restaurant near the airport. "I always knew you would do great things," Mrs. Walsh said, patting Emma's hand. "I just followed your instructions, Linda," Emma said. "You're the one who saved us." "We saved each other," Linda said with a smile. Captain Stevens raised his glass. "A toast," he said. "To Emma Rodriguez. The bravest pilot I ever met. And she wasn't even a pilot yet when we met." Everyone laughed and clinked their glasses. Later, Emma stood outside the restaurant, looking at the airplanes taking off and landing at the nearby airport. Linda came and stood next to her. "What are you thinking about?" Linda asked. "I'm thinking about Marcus," Emma said. "And about how strange life is. If he hadn't left those books, I never would have learned about flying. If I hadn't learned about flying, we all would have died that day. Everything happened for a reason. Do you still miss him?" "Every day. But I don't feel sad anymore. I feel grateful. He gave me this gift, even though he didn't know it." Linda put her arm around Emma's shoulders. "He would be so proud of the young woman you've become." Emma looked up at the darkening sky. Stars were starting to appear. Somewhere up there, airplanes were crossing the country, full of passengers who trusted their pilots to keep them safe. Soon, Emma would be one of those pilots. She would be the one responsible for getting people safely from one place to another. It was a huge responsibility, but she was ready for it. "You know what the best part is?" Emma said. "What's that?" "Every time I fly, I get to help people. Maybe they're going to visit family, like I was that day. Maybe they're going on vacation. Maybe they're going home. Whatever the reason, I get to be part of their journey. I get to keep them safe. Just like you kept me safe that day." Linda smiled. "You kept yourself safe, Emma. I just gave you some advice. You did all the hard work." "We did it together," Emma said. "And that's what flying is all about. Working together. Helping each other. No one flies alone." They stood there for a while, watching the planes take off into the night sky. Each one carried people who had their own stories, their own dreams, their own reasons for flying. And soon, Emma Rodriguez would be up there with them, living her dream and honoring her brother's memory, one flight at a time. The girl from Row 8 had found her wings. This story is dedicated to everyone who has ever overcome fear to help others, and to all the young people who dream of reaching for the sky.